Fairies. Fairies everywhere. No, not the beautiful, pretty types. Not those seen down a Swamp Alley bar. These were the types with tails. Fairy tales. Barging in and changing my way of life. My livelihood. My home. I can't help but not settle down as I'm pestered and followed by a talking mule. Talking about parfait. I could do with parfait right now. I could do with getting out of this joint and getting my home and livelihood back. Bring it back, please. Scene.
Can I just say, David, when you were just like, the tales, fairy tales, I was like, oh, try and keep composure. Try and keep composure.
I don't know why.
That was good.
I know him.
Are you not entertained?
Here's Johnny. I'll be back.
It's not the car, it's a silly movie boy.
Well, good movies.
Yes, welcome to Well Good Movies, the podcast that gives you the topics worth discussing and the movies worth watching. I'm your host, David Osger, and I am joined as ever by my co-host, Craig MacDonald. Hello, Craig.
Lamau.
How are you this week?
I'm fine, although I did a stupid thing and I managed to damage my vocal cords earlier in the week.
Oh,
I did hear that was quite the celebration you had.
Yep.
what happened?
I found a shiny Pokemon in Pokemon Go that I really wanted, and I
Nice.
screamed. Bear in mind, this is about 10 o'clock at night when I was out in my local town, and I screamed about 4 times.
Nice.
So for anyone who might hear me coughing every now, I don't have that. Not that. I'm just an idiot who likes things.
A very reasonable...
I love it.
Is it reasonable, though?
I was being sarcastic.
Oh, that's fine.
Could have been worse.
Yeah, so today we are joined by our good friend and collaborator, Nia Alavezos. Hello, Nia.
Hello. Thank you guys again for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. We've missed you since our DreamWorks discussion.
No. Oh man, it feels like another world.
It does. It was a lifetime ago. And we're back to talking old school movies as well, like when you discussed It's a Wonderful Life back at Christmas, which is, I think, a phrase that we all need right now as well. It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh God. Yeah.
How have you been the past few months? You've been one of the few people in production that has been, working through the year of 2020.
Yeah. Since I work in animation, the transfer over was relatively easy because, when we all went remote, like most of the artists were already remote, so it was just me working in production, just being able to sort of still access the server. So with that technology in hand, I was able to just carry on like normal. So my Sun and Moon, they sent me like monitors and like a computer tower. So I have my own like little unique setup here. But it's basically just been like never ending. I'm kind of jealous now of those who were furloughed for a bit, had a little bit of break, but it's okay.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? The people who didn't get it, it's just then they've had some form of holiday. And it's like, will they still get that at Christmas as well? That's a lot of holidays. Maybe you get extra Christmas break this year, hopefully.
We'll see. But it is interesting, though, just to see how it's going to change the industry, like not only animation, film and TV.
Yeah,
I'm curious to see that transition.
Yeah, and we're already seeing it with the way the things are filmed and, watching stuff that has been made now as restrictions are starting to be made, or restrictions are being lifted, I should say. Tell us, Nia, what is the challenge that you give us, the sort of, the genre you wanted us to talk about? This
time, I wanted to focus on film noir. Because I always thought it was rather, you said it's like talked about in film school, but it's also considered like super duper underrated. Like you don't see a lot of film noir made today, but like back then in like the 1950s, it was like the go-to thing, like right after the World War II. But yeah, I wanted to focus on film noir, which we're going to discuss today, which I'm very, very excited about. Yeah,
I definitely agree. Like I think, you get Hitchcock and that kind of stuff will be taught in film school, but you hear of noir and like French New Wave and all that kind of stuff from film school, but like you said, you don't necessarily always go through it or get taught it. You just get taught the basics of of film, going through Citizen Kane and that kind of stuff.
And I also wanted to bring up, well, it's coming up. It's called Noirvember. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Turner Classic Movies over here, but
Yeah.
I was in the States. That was like my number one channel. So that's basically a dedication the entire month of November for film noir. So they focus on like obviously like the big headers, but also like the sort of films like you wouldn't really know about. And it's just a sort of focus on the directors and the actors in that genre, which I love.
Well, yeah, it is like a different time, and we'll be talking about that today, about how, the films of that age were so different. And another big inspiration for this that, like you said about Noir November, hopefully we can revisit this in November, and we, previously planned to before, but we thought a perfect chance to bring this topic back was the fact that one of your favorites, Sunset Boulevard, is celebrating its 70th anniversary this year, which is really impressive. 1950 that film came out, which stars Gloria Swanson and William Holden. It's directed by Billy Wilder, and has really become infamous as a noir film, because that one is a bit more different, and what makes it noir to other ones, which we'll get on to later. Was any other points you had on film noir, Nia, in terms of like what draws you to it specifically?
Well, for me, I always loved that it's sort of strayed away from the typical Hollywood films that you would get in that time, at least like before the war, because you had like the big showy musicals, the romances, and like the hero films. But I love that film noir is basically crime drama and detective films that sort of focus on like human ambiguity, and they highlighted like female sexuality and their power. And I was like, yes. And how they just basically focused on the dark side of reality after the war in those stories and characters. And that really like pulls me to it, because you're not used to that sort of side of Hollywood, because about like the censorship and like all that other stuff before then. And it was just sort of Hollywood's movement to sort of what you see today in cinema.
Yeah, that's true as well. And it's interesting to see, like you said, that noir is not as big as a genre, but there is that debate as to what is noir, what isn't. I know with like a lot of modern films, you can see certain ones come up, but they don't specifically say it as the actual genre. Craig, were you the same as me? Did you have much experience with this? Is there certain ones you think of in your mind when you go to film noir?
I think I haven't had a great range of experiences with film noir, just because of being able to see certain things. So I definitely had like the stereotypical images in my head of what I expect. So very much like the crime drama-esque aspect of it. Now that I've gone a little bit into it, like I definitely see what Nia's talking about in terms of like the female sexuality, and there's a lot of interesting aspects, especially in the films I watched, that I just didn't quite consider, which it's quite fascinating in terms of my ignorant mindset towards these things. So, but yeah, I always imagine like the detective office, the PI in the hat,
At the desk.
Yeah, at the desk. It's late at night. There's probably like a glass of whiskey somewhere hanging around.
The shadows, like the blinds in the walls, the lights coming in.
Yeah,
Delicious.
The femme fatale comes in and sort of tells them their big story of what they need help, that kind of stuff. It's also interesting looking at, if it is modern, what is considered noir, because for people at home then who, why should I watch noir, or what films, would I be interested? But it is surprising that there are ones out there like Blade Runner, even Who Framed Roger Rabbit. When I was doing like searches online, even those come up as noir films. Even they're not really sort of listed as their exact genre, but they do have those kind of influences. And, I was seeing other lists which were talking about the best noir films, and I don't know what your opinion is on this, Nia, but you had films like Inherent Vice, which was 2014. You had LA Confidential from 1997, Fargo. I found Alfred Hitchcock could sometimes be hit or miss whether it was noir or wasn't. So I saw like Vertigo come up, Blade Runner, Chinatown. But yeah, I was just like, I don't know if like some of those are noir or not. Like it was interesting.
Yeah, I think like obviously like at the end of the day, it's like the classic noir is obviously the use of like how it was shot too, like back in the day with like the juxtapositions and the cinematography. Like the good is like the white and the bad is the dark, and you have the use of shadows and those Dutch angles that threw you for loops, and like the lurking terrors. So it's like that's like the big visual element for me with like film noir. But then, like the more modern you go, it's just that again, that focus sort of on the crime, the underbelly, and just sort of focusing on like the outcasts of society, which is like Inherent Vice and Fargo especially. It's like more like a parody in a way, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It definitely feels that the more modern you go, they're trying to embody the somewhat narrative spirit of film noir, but not necessarily like the aesthetic, which I think it's definitely true when you look at something like, say, Blade Runner, because let's face it, I think the only major similarity in that situation is probably the psychological discussions at times, rather than say anything else about it. Because let's face, because even though it's dark, gringy set, it's the future, man. Come on.
I suppose it's the kind of and the mystery element to it is the fact that it's not, the way that the mystery unravels is quite...
It's like a detective thing in a way, just a big reveal, there's a chase,
Yeah.
There's still like a good, the bad, and that sort of battle.
And the most visual one, when you said about what makes noir, when you have like a visual piece, I suppose would be like something like Sin City as well, which takes that sort of this have the black and white and that kind of stuff.
How about that one? Yeah.
But we'll leave all the modern ones to another day, because today, like I said, we wanted to talk about some of Nia's recommendations, some of her favourites, and the film that inspired today's discussion, which is Sunset Boulevard, which, like I mentioned earlier, is celebrating its 70th anniversary. And is a film that we have now all seen, and I think is definitely worthy of discussion and a dedicated episode. So this week, we're already saying we have our usual segment, The Movie Vault, in which we preserve movies for all time. And as this has inspired our discussion today and is celebrating 70 years, Sunset Boulevard goes straight into the Movie Vault at the top of the episode.
Woo-hoo! Good job.
So, into the Movie Vault, Sunset Boulevard goes. And the question now for you guys at home is, what will we choose to accompany it later on? So, in the spirit of noir, there's no mysteries now, guys. We know, for anybody at home, they're just going to put Sunset Boulevard in there. Well, we beat you to it. Yeah, exactly.
Put that MacGuffin right out there.
Hedda Hopper speaking. I'm talking from the bedroom of Norma Desmond. Don't bother with a rewrite, man. Take this direct. Ready? As day breaks over the murder house.
Yes, you'll read the big black headlines about Norma Desmond and this Hollywood scandal. But you'll never read the true story about the rest of us who were part of it. Me, for instance, Joe Gillis, a promising young writer from Dayton, Ohio. And Betty, that nice kid I met at a Hollywood party, who knew nothing about me, but knew what she wanted. Don't you love Artie?
Of course I love him. I always will.
Well, we should have lived happily ever after, like they do in the movies. But this was different, because this is a Hollywood story about the people who make the movies. The little ones that you never hear of, like Betty and me. The great ones, like Cecil B. DeMille. All those who knew Norma Desmond, a strange woman who left her mark on all of us who crossed her path.
Gloria Swanson, one of the great personalities of this generation, in a role that comes to an actress once in a lifetime. Rising to the heights, William Holden creates a startling portrayal. And a new star is born in Sunset Boulevard, Miss Nancy Olson.
Joe? Where are you? What's this all about?
Why don't you come out and see for yourself? The address is 10,086 Sunset Boulevard.
Yes, come out to see for yourself the film that reaches a new milestone of dramatic daring. The film that every critic says is a giant among motion pictures.
Would you say, going into this, Nia, that there's any other important points about noir to remember or to keep in mind to know before seeing Sunset Boulevard?
Yes, you had mentioned femme fatale And basically that's like, to me, it's like the badass woman who uses her sexuality and oftentimes like cruelty to manipulate the men and gain power, money, independence. And it's like basically just to stray away from that cliche of like being a boring housewife. And it's like basically they have whatever it takes to make their own dreams a reality, at, you know, like murder, robbery, or whatever. But that sort of plays into Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, yeah, as I mentioned, that femme fatales destroy the social norms and stepping on men, making some men ladder, just getting up there, climbing that ladder of shame, corruption.
I think it's also interesting because when I saw like the poster and everything for it, and you know, Gloria Swanson is like the center sort of character to that, and I was like, oh, this is refreshing. So will this be a, you know, 50s film that actually does have like a female lead? And then it starts off with this like male characters, like dialogue and narration. I was like, okay, well, we probably won't get that. But, you know, it still was pretty impactful to see a film that had such a, you know, a female character. It's such a core position of the film. And like you said, which even in other noirs can sometimes just be, you know, a side to the male character. So I think that's why this one, you know, did really stand out to me. And I think it has a lot of merits, which, you know, is similar to famous films like Citizen Kane, etc. I got to the end of it and I was just like, why is this not more celebrated? Because it makes such an artistic point and such a big message. And, I felt that the end of it was like the Rosebud kind of thing. I was like, wow, this is really, really daring and really, you know, innovative for that time by the time I got to the end of it. So yeah,
Sunset Boulevard?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, because it was like the first time I watched it recently in sort of preparation for this, and yeah, I was just amazed at how daring it was in terms of like, you know, giving its messages and that kind of stuff.
Like Billy Wilder had guts, like we'll talk about it more, but just being able to just make a film like that just blatantly calls out Hollywood for what it is back then, it took a lot of guts and courage, and I'm glad he was able to do it.
The final line definitely has become like quite infamous. Just the fact that even before even getting into Sunset Boulevard, I was just aware of the "I'm ready for my close-up" line. I just didn't realize what an absolute sinister undertone it just took after watching the film.
That's true, actually, yeah, and you think of it in a different context, because I didn't think of it as like, oh, there's that line, because yeah, like Craig said, it takes on a different life in the film.
It's like a tragedy too in its own right, just Norma Desmond's story and how she ends up where she ends up and her overall demise. It's quite sad, and it's like disturbing to watch, just sort of her unravel into this madness, and then the ending. It's just like, oh.
One of the most gripping psychological performances I've seen in a while. Even the way she talks, like in regular scenes, makes it feel like she thinks that she's in a film and just desperately trying to be in a film. Because at first I thought that, right, this is just really overblown acting, until I sort of realized, oh, she's literally just been destroyed by this industry. And then I just bought into the character, and also helps facilitate probably, and I messaged David last night saying this, probably my favorite film twist of all time now.
And even the way that it opens as well. Something I do love about watching these old school movies is, you know, the sort of dramatics and the visuals of them. And sometimes then when you come out of it, you kind of, you know, you imagine then the world in this, like, imagine if it was like this old school movie type world, you know, you go into your car and you imagine the music like, dun, 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 you know. But like, even just before recording this podcast, I went into the bathroom and there was a daddy long legs that's like fallen into the toilet, and it's like floating there in the water, and I was like, oh, it's like it's like Joe, it's been murdered. Like, I was imagining this daddy long legs then giving like a big narration, like, you might be interested as to how I actually got here.
Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Did you fish out the body and handle it with more care than you would have if it were alive?
Yeah. There are some great quotes in this as well. Like, I had a lot of moments which I just wrote down lines which I'm like, I'm using that in life.
Oh yeah, it's delicious. Like, just the dialogue alone, you're just like, oh. What makes me love this film so much is the depiction of old Hollywood, and the fact that it was based off Gloria Swanson's life in Hollywood as a film actress, because she was like one of the most famous silent film actresses of her time. And I love the fact, though, that Billy Wilder even sought out other silent film stars for the role of Norma Desmond, like Mary Pickford and Paula Negri and even Greta Garbo. But they all like declined because they were horrified that he was making a film like this, like at that time, like exposing Hollywood, and like they're basically like putting themselves in jeopardy to play Norma Desmond. So that's one of my favorite facts. But also, did you guys know that her butler was played by Erich von Stroheim, who was also like a famous silent film actor and director who like worked with Swanson at the time. So I just love those little calls to the silent era. But I just love how it just like shits on Hollywood and the world itself at the time. It's full of pessimism and cynicism, which is, like I said, the opposite of most of the stories told in Hollywood. For me, I love it because it's like an interesting shift into how the storytelling changed in Hollywood after the war to show like the grittier films, stories with more realistic characters and tougher situations, as opposed to like romance and lights and action. And Wilder basically exposes corruptive Hollywood and the decline of old Hollywood, and he unites those facts from Swanson's career and his own career with the fiction and the dreams, and just to basically shine a light on the underbelly of Hollywood during that time.
Yeah,
so that's one of my big things for me.
I was surprised looking at it. I thought, oh, this must have, Gloria Swanson must have been just a big actress or a big name, so Meryl Streep at that time. But when I was looking at it, I was like, wow, this is weird how much it reflects the actual character. Like you said, that she was a silent film star and then, faded away, etc. And I was just like, that takes guts for her to even play that role. I suppose a similar example in recent years would be Michael Keaton in Birdman. That's almost like the same situation in which he's like, I'm going to be, reflective of my own career in that, it's gone down the toilet and I'm known for playing this big superhero. So, and then even in the film, like the pictures used of her actually of her film career, etc.
Yeah, and I also love Billy Wilder in general and how his films focus on those same outsiders and characters who didn't like fit in with society. And especially in Sunset Boulevard, we see like the depressed and delusional world of the unsuccessful Hollywood actors and actresses, and even like the writers. Like Gillis is like a failed B movie screenwriter, and Norma Desmond's forgotten movie icon, and her butler, failed director. And then like we even get what's his name? Buster Keaton. Like we get a Buster Keaton cameo, who was also a famous silent film actor. So it's just an interesting take on Hollywood at that time, and how I just love how he exposes everything. Like the land of dreams isn't really what you think of it.
Yeah, it definitely has a lot of reference, like there's so many references to like, oh, Paramount's doing this, like in Hollywood, this is how it works. And the mansion as well, I found was quite indicative of everything they were saying. Kind of reminded me of like, in Psycho, you got the iconic Bates Motel, and you've got, again in Citizen Kane, you've got like his house and everything. And to me, that was like a really iconic set, is that they have this old decaying mansion which is all overgrown, and I thought that was really impactful, and like you said, reflected the message of this woman who's hidden away and not what she once was.
But just the fact as well, to add to that, it's not the fact that the mansion then like over time just comes back to life, and then obviously the one thing that they make a big deal out of in the film, which is the bringing back of the pool, then ends up being the site of probably one of the most famous scenes in terms of the murder, and then that basically is the thing that ends up springboarding her back into the cameras. It's kind of terrifying to think just like how perfect that like symbolism actually works.
Yeah, it's like the house itself I would consider like a character in its like own right. It's just so many different rooms, and it's each littered with parts of her past, that she clings onto, and like even the end when the staircase, and that is just like a pivotal moment, and it's just like, ooh, it's like the life and that beating heart. Ugh.
That's what's kind of good about old movies as well, is I was sort of looking at the time, left on the film. Obviously these days you could be like, there's 20 minutes left, but then you sort of get to it and then you're like, oh wait, it's already finished, because there's like 10 or 15 minutes of credits, whereas in these older movies they go right up to the last second, because all they need is just that title card of who starred in it, and that's it, kind of thing. So yeah, they make as much of they can of that like and you're like, how are they going to wrap this up in just that little, like, 2 minutes? And like you said, that staircase sequence does, do it perfectly. And I also like as well how Joe's character sort of goes through, repeats information she says about the house. So he backs up what you were saying about how it's a character. He says, oh, did you know that this floor was recommended by, this person, and, it's great for dancing. So it's kind of like how it's embedded himself in his psyche as well.
And speaking of like the pool, I basically just love how the film starts with the murder. So it's like doom and gloom, like from the beginning. And it's basically narrated by a dead dude. So it's like, boom, we know what to expect. And it's just really interesting just to see the highs and lows to how we got to that moment, like in the pool. It's like different. It's, well, not different, but it's like you're watching it for the first time. Every time you watch it, because you catch something new and you're like, ooh.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking watch now. Is like there is something special about a narrated film as well, because like even he says at the beginning, this might not be the story you think it is, or you might be surprised how it came here, and it does add a nice flavor to films when they are narrated, because it gives them a personality, and especially then it also adds the sort of like old school aesthetic, because it was a much bigger thing back then as well.
Like I love the film. I thought Gloria Swanson's performance was just captivating and just psychotic, but there were just small details that just took me aback. I mean, like the ladder progression of men you mentioned. I thought that was an interesting take and just like well executed. But the fact then the butler like just comes out and says, "I'm the first husband," I was like, what? I think I just messaged David saying that's my favorite movie twist of all time, because I was like, of all things I expected him to be, I did not expect him to be an old-time director who felt a level of guilt for being part of bringing this woman into Hollywood, to the point he would just make himself subservient and basically watch her next string of relationships.
Oh yeah,
it just
even
blew
like think
my
that,
mind.
It's very disturbing.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, how would that relationship have ended in a way that's not like, it's usually you must move out or you must leave the house. And, how
but
does
I guess it's like, when did he take the role as butler?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it as soon as like talkies were like brought in and he's like, oops, there goes my job? It's good.
It's also just really disturbing then, the fact that throughout the entire film, he always just refers to her as Madame. And it's just one of those things where, again, it just feels like he's just still not truly acknowledging her identity, because he's still trying to keep up this film facade. The fact that he's basically on the side just writing loads and loads of film letters, the fact that he's emphasizing any and all environments that, like, Paramount wants to get involved with her, until it finds out they only want to rent a car off her, in which case they go stum. Like, it's just I don't know what's darker, like the breakdown that she actually suffers, to the point that, like, when Joel basically wants to do things like leave, she basically goes straight for like the nuclear death option, or what he's essentially doing to her and just like helping maintain this facade. I don't know.
Yeah, it's because like they set it up as well, where you think, oh, he's just like the weird butler at the beginning, and he's playing the organ, and you sort of get an idea straight away for, oh, this is what that character, that this type of character is. But like I said, then the more the film goes on, the more clever you realize he is, as you realize things like the letters. And then especially when they do go to Paramount and they mention about the car rental, you are like, this guy is, very on it. And that's why when that revelation does come about, you sort of buy it so much, because he does seem so on top of everything. But yeah, like you said, I'm just interested in one. And it's also the fact that she just never acknowledges him as there's never a hint that she is potentially like previously been in a relationship with him. There's no acknowledgement from her. She always treats him as staff, and barely even looks at him really. And I think that's interesting. So yeah, I'm just interested as to whether like Nia said, did he leave the house and then apply for the role, and literally was just like, hello, I am, the butler, and she's just like, oh, hello, nice to meet you. Did she just pretend that like she never knew him? Or because as we see later on, I wouldn't be surprised if mentally she was in that state in which she did just block him out of her mind. I don't know.
Can we also just acknowledge the fact that he basically burgled the guy's entire house and brought it to his own home?
Again, another hint there was like, this guy's got more to him than meets the eye if he's like able to like bring all of his stuff to the house.
Yeah, but I guess that would also make, it's like, obviously it makes Norma Desmond like the perfect femme fatale, and it's not what you would expect a femme fatale to be, because you always expect it to be like gorgeous blonde, mysterious, sunglasses inside, but it's like Norma Desmond, she uses her like social status and her sexuality to like motivate herself to get back into that spotlight that she's been like trying to get for like however many years she's been out of work. Like she was a famous actress, people used to recognize her, and like that's what made her happy. But it's just like Hollywood like ate her, like, chewed her back up and like spit her out. So it's just interesting just to see like that mental decay. And as you guys were discussing, at like what point did she just sort of lose it? And then the butler came back, and it's like how many years after, like talkies and all this stuff. And it's very interesting to just think about.
Yeah, it's a theme that comes up a lot more like now. So what I found interesting about it, like, was this one of the first films to talk about like focus on Hollywood? Because there is always that story of like, oh, there's nothing that Hollywood loves more than talking or making films about itself. So, I was sort of intrigued as to like, well, how many was there before 1950? Because obviously that was the, more early days of Hollywood. Whether Sunset Boulevard did sort of break the norm in that sense as well.
I think it was, because I was reading somewhere about how obviously Wilder had to keep it on like top secret down low, and he would only release like one page of the script per time for review. So to keep everything a secret, and like he used Paramount as, like Paramount called it out in the film. So he took so many risks like in his own career at the time. Like he could have been like immediately like shut down and like blacklisted in the industry, but it's like, I'm not sure if any films came before that just was so blatant in terms of like, Hollywood will throw you out as soon as you get old. We don't care how much you've worked, Yeah. If you're not like useful to us, then we don't need you, which is like, it's horrifying and it's sad, and it still happens like today, which is just like awful.
And like you said, that that was back in the days in which there was the studio system in which you worked for the studio. So yeah, you can imagine there would be, writing your own death note kind of thing, because you are employed by the studio, you make so many films for them. And that was what was great, when she arrived at the studio, she was like, oh, these, the studio wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me, there's a lot
that's actually like a fact of Gloria Swanson's real life. Like she worked with Paramount, she was like the star, so it's like without her, what would the film industry be? Which I think is an interesting like call to her own career.
I just find it fascinating that they actually allowed the name Paramount in this.
Yes.
Film. The fact that they just didn't go for like some form of dummy company just for the sake of the fakeness. No, they actually just say Paramount.
The last sort of big note I would want to say about it is like Gloria Swanson's performance. I think that her facial expressions, her acting, the costumes as well. I think, again, for that time period, they really went all out on the visuals, because the house is fantastic, and the dance scene, and the room that's placed into, but the work that they put into her costumes to make her always different, and she has that like veil over her face. It was really fantastic, and you get it straight away as soon as you see her. When she's got like the eyes, and she's all like wide-eyed, and she that was one of my favorite lines in the film, was when she says, I can say anything with my eyes, and I thought that was interesting, because we do talk a lot about, I think like one of the classic examples again is in Psycho, when you see the woman who gets killed, like her eyes when she's driving that car, and people always say, oh, the eyes are the window to the soul, and that's how you sort of like get a story from the actor, etc. So anytime that their eyes are blocked, they struggle more to sort of tell what their character's thinking. So that's why I thought this was interesting on the complete opposite side, showing how she uses her eyes, and she's been used to using them, and you see in the other pictures that they're sort of like purposely more white and more bright, and yeah, I just loved the facial expressions, because again, during that time period, people would be a bit more reserved about playing bigger characters. I think they would be more on this played like a typical guy, typical gal, that kind of thing. But she really goes for it, making this big, bold character, which really jumps off the screen, which I loved.
Yeah, and I love that quote she gives. That she's like, "I am big. It's the pictures that got small."
Yeah, that's what I also wrote that one down. That hit me. I was like, yeah.
Like, oh.
For me, my favorite scene involving her is still where she's just doing those home shows and she just comes out as Charlie Chaplin. I'm just, for literally no reason, it's just the way she's there. I that just sold it for me in terms of she's just a fantastic actress. Because what on earth? Like the fact she's there still having like incredible dramatic moments dressed as Charlie Chaplin and she doesn't lose any of that power. It was just fantastic.
And I love Cecil B. DeMille basically was himself. Like when Gloria visits the film set, you know, she's back in, he's just like sitting in the director's chair, like they just interrupted shooting on like whatever he was working on. Just be like, hey, you know, come over here, beam the scene, you know,
yeah,
which I love.
The final few lines that I noted down of her, one was, that's the problem with you readers, you know all the plots. I thought that was just a great, again, it wasn't as big as, like you said, like it's the pictures that got small, but I just liked that little analysis from her. I was like, that's quite nice, you know, just because you could say that about a lot of people, even if they weren't like writers or, you know, readers. You could say, you know all the plots kind of thing. And then I also loved the way she said, well, obviously British people will say more garage, but then Nia, you might say garage, but then Norma Desmond says the garage.
At one point she full on just says garage.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
It's like, go to the garage. You're like, wow. And also, I was really happy to know that Norma Desmond would trust me and you, Nia, because she likes Sagittarians. You can trust them, so we're good in there.
We won't be shot. Thank God.
We're good in Norma's eyes. And I never heard zodiacs referred to like that. I don't know why. People always just say, "Oh, you are Sagittarius," but I love the idea of going Sagittarians. You know,
I never heard that either until then. So it's just like, ooh. Spice it up.
I want to know what the other alternatives, like Leo, like what would you know, like what?
Leoins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just Leons, surely.
Yeah. I just want to hear her say all of them. It's like, I don't trust Leoins, you know. So yeah, it's a fantastic film. It's a fantastic performance from Gloria Swanson and William Holden, and I think it rightly deserves its place in the movie vault and film history. And yeah, I think it's really great this is celebrating this 70th anniversary. I wish it did have more acknowledgement as one of the classics. To me, it did seem like it should be out there with, you know, the big ones like Psycho and Citizen Kane, because it is so bold in what it's saying. So yeah, that is Sunset Boulevard. So Nia, what are some of the other noir films that, you know, come to mind? You know, what would you say you've seen like a big range, and like these are the ones that are your favorites and the ones you don't like, or is it all the ones you've sort of seen? You've always checked out the good ones.
Yeah, it was mostly the ones that I've seen and I've liked. But my second favorite is, as I mentioned, Rafifi, which is sort of like lesser known, but it's like a French noir crime film directed by Jules Dessin, who was part of Hollywood, and he was blacklisted and kicked out. So he was just like, screw that, I'm going to continue making films the way I want over, you know, in Europe. But it's basically just about this band of bank robbers who do this one heist, and the heist there's just like stealing, I think it was like jewelry or whatever, but it's done entirely, the sequence is like 20-30 minutes done entirely without dialogue. So it's like so suspenseful and so delicious, and it's just but it's just like the perfect example of what film noir is. It's just crime, the underbelly of, you know, the city, and it's just so delicious. And the fact that it was done without dialogue has always been the favorite little bit for me. But if you guys could ever find it and watch it, definitely recommend it.
Yeah, it's a good example again of like finding out and searching for films, because like we said in our previous episode, people are too often just, oh, you know, if it's not online or this specific place, I won't bother. It's like, well, you know, you got to find, you know, sort out these things sometimes. But yeah, I think that's great as well. Anytime that you can have creative stuff, especially with visuals and sound, and I think that's why, like, you know, the artist that, you know, had the Oscar win a few years ago again, wasn't it? It was that idea of like, oh, it's, you know, commenting on Hollywood and old Hollywood, and again, that's what I thought was interesting with Sunset Boulevard, is they're kind of going back to that idea of like silent film start, then the talkies. So yeah, if they can pull off an entire sequence without dialogue, then yeah, that's fantastic.
It's so good. That's my favorite part about that film. Typical film noir, French. There's a delicious like dance number in a club that's just like done with like silhouettes of like the dancers on stage, but just that bank heist and the lack of dialogue. And it's like the simple little shots, the little cutaways that help build the suspense. He cuts back, there's like sweat slowly dripping, you know, are they going to do it? Is it going to be successful? And it's just like, good.
Craig is potentially already sold. He's got a heist in him. He's a sucker for a heist.
It's good. And it's like, especially like a heist film that sort of reinvents the way that you do heist films, because it's like, oh, you've seen one heist film, you've seen them all, but this one just sort of puts a little twist on it, and you actually sort of care about the characters and their overall demise, because this being like a film noir, obviously it's not going to end the best for everyone, so it's just sort of like, you just want them to succeed, you know, they're criminals. So you're sort of like,
So basically what you've described is a heist film that reinvents a heist film before heist films are necessarily a thing.
Yes, there you go.
I was interested in what you did think about the Maltese Falcon, Nia, because like I said, watching that one was such a different experience to Sunset Boulevard. You know, there was, you know, this film which is somewhat more traditionally told, to this other one which I was like, I don't know what to think watching this. I was still trying to like digest it as I was watching it. This is such an intense mystery thriller. What is your thoughts on?
It's like a mystery thriller that kind of like goes nowhere, because it's like what they're searching for is like the MacGuffin, so it doesn't even really matter at the end of the day. But yeah, I just love how this one is like as you guys were discussing earlier, the stereotypical like, oh, wise guy, detective, searching, you know, private investigator, searching through the shadows and getting entangled in like women and, you know, thinking he's discovered one plot, but you know, he gets thrown for like a complete loop. But yeah, I haven't seen that one for a long time either, but I just remember just being in love with Humphrey Bogart and loving just being confused like the whole time. Just like him being like, wait, what the hell's going on? Like, what? Yeah, but it's good.
That's what I thought throughout there, and that's why I was just like, this is such a different experience. I don't know what to think, because sometimes you will get thrown for a loop when, say, I don't know why they came into my mind, was say something like disaster films, where you'll think, is this bad because, you know, it like the tropes of some disaster films are just cheesy and stupid and dumb, but then you're just like, well, say like Godzilla last year, for example, was like, well, you know, it can be good because it knows what it is. It's paying tribute to those sort of like disaster films and the goofy elements of them. And that's where I was like watching it, like, this is really hard to, you know, critique or make a judgment on, or like a rating, because like you said, you don't know what's going on, and, you know, characters are constantly like changing and switching. You're like, this throws out all the rules of film in terms of like, you know, your character's progression and like, you know, moving the plot along, and your set, you know, your intro, middle and end kind of thing. I was like, I don't know what to think, but yeah, by the end of it, you are like, well, that took me on a journey, so, you know, it did its job there, in that, you know, it takes you through a completely bizarre set of circumstances, and you come out sort of changed by it, kind of thing.
Yeah, you have like a bunch of femme fatales, and you have like this possible love romance triangle, awkward stuff, but it's like just starts with like someone coming in being like, I can't find my sister, help, you know. And it's just, I do enjoy how you don't think like the end result, you didn't expect what the heck was going to happen, because you're just thinking it's going to be this like murder mystery, whodunit, but you're kind of like, what, you know? Yeah. And like Peter Lorre's in it, which I love him. He's like so underrated. Yeah,
he's fantastic in this film. And yeah, Humphrey Bogart, like I said, I don't know how he does it. Like, you know, so you were going to do this, and then you were going to do that, and I knew you'd do, and I was like, how are you doing this, man? Because even at one point the character does say, like, or several characters say, like, it's like, wow, how like, you were able to come up with all that, huh? And he's just like, well, I gotta do this because, you know, they're gonna set us up for this, and if I do that, then it's like,
wise guy, see?
Yeah. So how he how he acts that and remembers all of that as well is I was amazed by.
It definitely seems to be a skill of Humphrey Bogart, because he also stars in the one film that I did watch for this, which was The Big Sleep.
Oh yeah, I did see he was in that as well.
Yeah, he also there plays a PI who is able to juggle a lot of things ongoing in the search for variety of people. That's why at times when you were describing the Maltese Falcon, I'm just like, did I secretly just watch the Maltese Falcon? But then you said about missing sister, like, no, it was a blackmailed sister in mine.
There's always a sister.
Yeah,
it's always a sister.
Well,
in my case, literally was the sister.
But yeah, I like as well how you said, Nia, about like the MacGuffin side of it. You know, it's really fun how they play into the Falcon itself. So, you know, when they reveal it at the end and he's there like trying to chip away at it, and you have that dramatic music, like, you know, dum dum dum, you know, and you got the image of it, and they're telling the story of the Falcon. You know, all of that I thought was interesting, and yet, but yeah, how you said how all this drama revolves around it, and it's not so much about the item, but like I said, the woman who's involved with him, and yeah, you got the lady who works for him is like his assistant, is it? She's like a very strong character. He's like, oh, will you put this person up? Yeah, sure, why not? And I was like, okay, this woman seems to be willing to take on a lot of problems for like.
What is she doing there? Get out!
Yeah. And they also sticks that typical trope of the old Hollywood like romance kisses, isn't it? Just like grabs person, presses face against, and like he does that a lot in this film. They're just like looking at each other, and he's just like, and they're like, whoa.
But you're like, where did this even come from?
Yeah, it's like he was meant to have had a relationship with his partner's wife, and then like he's like getting with two other people doing it. I was like, bizarre.
I just feel there's like the writer, or I'm not sure if this one was also based off a book, because I know The Big Sleep was based off like some crime novel. It always feels just sort of like the writers just throw everything in there to be like, yeah, we're going to have this, we're going to have two women and intrigue, and there's going to be a missing sister, and blah, 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 he's going to go here, but then there's going to be a statue, and they're going to want to try to find the statue, but the statue is meaningless. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, guys, just calm down, put the brakes on.
Yeah, you can imagine the pitch to that film is like just, you know, saying all of that. But like you said, the technical side of it is interesting as well. Some of the shots they go with, like when he's on the phone and they just linger on like the phone, they don't do the typical and just go to him and see his face as he's talking, and you know, there's some interesting stuff with that.
Yeah, and I do like it's like the ending quote, right? It's like the stuff that dreams are made of, when they're just sort of like fading away, and it's just like, ooh.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed the Maltese Falcon, because I did not enjoy The Big Sleep. Thankfully, I did read a couple of reviews about mine just to double check it wasn't just me going insane, but thankfully a few people online did say this film is confusing. I was like, great, I'm not the only one who was lost. So just to give you a basic idea of what it is, David, PI, shocker, is asked to investigate about some blackmailing / help deal with some basically debts that like his daughter is racking up. He eventually spends time finding the guy, and that guy is dead. You'd think that'd be part of the mystery, but nope. Nobody seems to care that he's dead. They just seem to acknowledge that he's dead, and then sort of move on with the, oh well, got to work out someone else who's being blackmailed now. And it's they're like, wait, are we not going to talk about the guy who's dead? And then the body disappeared, and everyone's like, It's like, no, murder. No, I don't care if somebody owes some money to a guy. And then it turns out that the guy who owned the house of the dead person is like a lead gangster, and nobody is talking about this apart from, we got to find this guy's wife. Like, wait, what? No, what? Did he not do it? And also, for some reason, one of like the original like guy's daughter is there, but she's drugged. Except that it turns out that she's not necessarily drugged; she's just has psychological issues. It's like, what? Then the other daughter is like winning loads of money at like a casino, and then the casino tries to rob it off her, but then she ends up at the house of the guy anyway, along with a missing wife, who we just out of nowhere we're told, oh yeah, she's missing. Now we found her. It's like, what? No, what? What's going on? Eventually, things start making sense where they start shooting people, except for how the gangster, who was surprisingly behind it all, gets killed, which is that for some reason he doesn't have a gun going into this last confrontation, but his henchmen think he does. So like Humphrey Bogart's character just shoots the room a couple of times, scaring this gangster. He runs out the door. His henchmen just gun him down because they think it's the PI. So I'm just like, what? And also I think it's actually a really bad example of what you really like about film noir, which is Nia, which is the idea of emboldening female sexuality, because this does not do a good job of it all, because all the women in this film are just unnecessarily horny. Like, all of them. Anyone he encounters. Like, he even gets in a taxi which has a female taxi driver there. And I'm thinking, oh, good, this will be the one character that doesn't have some form of flirtation. Nope. When he leaves, she's like, hey, if you need a driver, here's my card. When's best to call you, day or night? Night. I'm working during the day. And I was like, for God's sake. Like, he gets flirty with, like, a book owner a bookshop owner for no reason. Literally, he's just like, hi, I need to watch. And she's there like, well, I can shut up early and we can watch it together. I'm like, what? No! Like, I'm sorry. He probably is attractive. I mean, I'm not, attractive to 40-year-old men from the 1950s. But every single woman is just coming on to him. And I'm just like, stop it. Stop it now. And then in the end, like, a woman who is responsible for, like, some bad stuff has basically said, oh, it's because of her psychological issues. We need to get her into psych care. I'm just like, great. I was just sat there, and I was like, this is not the greatest example, especially considering I watched it straight after Sunset Boulevard. I don't think that helped. But it definitely embodied, like, probably the worst aspects of, like, film noir, especially in terms of, like, handling, like, of the mystery. At least if there's going to be a mystery, I think it needs to be a bit better pace, or if it's going to go, like, off the rails, like you guys said, at least have some reasons why it's going in that direction. This just didn't, and it saddened me.
Damn. So yeah, I haven't seen that film for quite some time, but it always felt like a big excuse to just have Bogart and Lauren Bacall in it, just to have, like, that sexual tension and them just throwing sexual innuendos back at each other. Like, that's just the entire film to me, at least. And it's like, I don't know, it's like Howard Hawks, like, not best film, but that's all I remember. It was just like them just being, like, sexually charged on screen together, because, like, the director knew, like, they would get tickets.
Yeah, they are great up until the point where she's just sitting in a car and he's looking at her like, you're shaking. And she's just there perfectly still. And he's like, you're shaking. And then she's just there like, I'll do this for you. Why? Because I love you. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it was like, sort of like, how far could they go and get away with before, like, the censorship was like, Yeah. It's like, I know, like, Hitchcock loved to, like, play with that. Because, like, have you guys seen, like, North by Northwest?
Yeah.
It's like the train scene, and it's like they're going to, like, about to kiss and the train goes through the tunnel. So you just see that image. But it's like, if it's, someone watching, not really paying attention, there's bad an eye. But if you really like, I see what you did there, Hitchcock, like that sort of stuff.
So we now go to our section, which is the movie vault, to submit what other films we think are typical of noir. And yes, Nia, I think you definitely have your set recommendation, which is...
Yes, I would put Rafifi into the vault because it's lesser known. It's directed by Jules Dessin, but it's just sort of the perfect example of what film noir is, and it's focusing on the underbelly, the crime world. It's a heist film. You have delicious, sort of like horrible characters you really shouldn't be rooting for, but you're rooting for them and you want them to succeed, and it's just a damn good film. And like I had discussed before, there's that 30 minutes of no dialogue. It's just shows like why filmmaking is important, because you don't need dialogue to tell a story, just like Norma Desmond said herself. But it's just sort of, it's a perfect example of what film noir is to me, and I think it should be put in that vault, kept safe.
I think, yeah, definitely, I'd agree. From what you said, like I said, it sounds really intriguing. I really want to see it, and it's good for that variety of, like a French film, especially if it's got the crime and mystery elements to it. Because, yeah, even though, like I said, I appreciated and respected Maltese Falcon, I just feel that there's so many other sort of like crime ones out there as well. I'm happy with like Sunset Boulevard is the one I enjoyed the most. So I think if Rafifi's going in there alongside that, because I'm assuming that Craig wouldn't want the Big Sleep to go in there based on his experience.
Did anyone else appreciate the irony that we are basically putting a film that involves like a bank heist into a vault?
Yes.
We'll have to break it out someday.
It'll break itself out. That's fine.
They'll find a way. It'll be done completely silent, and you will never know.
Yeah, true. So going into the movie vault this week is Rafifi alongside Sunset Boulevard.
This is truly an endgame that eludes me. As I sit here at my desk, my feet swimming in the sea of bottles of former drinks to take my sorrows, I struggle to think of a game that will challenge our film noir expert, and David. How can I make a game that can demonstrate the beauty of the noir? Is there even a fair way to do it? Nia, with that glint of optimism in her eye, is adept to this sort of stuff. David, he doesn't even know what adept means. I stare at the blank page of ideas and my mind is racing with the logic of a film noir narration. No idea of what to do. If only more films I knew could be like endgame time! So what we'll be doing today in a game that I've lovingly called Noir Exception is basically, I felt that more films could use like a film noir sort of esque narration to them. So what I've done is I've written some for some notable films of a variety of factors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you a narration that I've read. So this doesn't necessarily have to be the beginning of the film. It could be various parts of the film. I want you to try and work out what film it is based on my noir narration.
That's kick-ass.
Yeah. So what I'll have you do is there's going to be basically a speed element to this. So what you do is when you think you know what the film is, message me privately on Zoom immediately, and basically the point will go to the first person who gets it correct. If you want, you can basically send me multiple entries. I mean, you can't just be like typing every single film that's ever existed. What's also going to happen for the final one is a special round. Okay, so are we ready for the first narration?
Yes.
Okay. I would also like to thank the random film noir generator that I found for giving me a lot of inspiration for this. Yes, a random film noir generator exists.
I was going to say, wow, I'm impressed by whoever created that.
Yeah. Okay. It was a dark night. I walked down this normal street, looking at the quainter little houses, envious of the regular lives that the people within lead. I'm instantly made cautious at the attention that my associate, the professor, and I could draw, so I took out the lights in the street. We chatted about the legitimacy of what we were doing, whether what we were doing was right, whether it was good, but we had no choice. We had to protect the boy. We got into the house in question, a large 4 high above, and now, thanks to us, a small child in a basket placed below. Okay, so you've both gone for the same answer. Can I say that the culture differences are definitely showing? I was going to say, yeah,
this is going to
show. Yes, that's so true.
Because David has answered Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Nia has gone for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
I'm exposed.
So in that front,
this is where Craig is just cruel. Like, we are in Britain, Nia, and I do not accept that version.
You know what? I've been here a year now.
No, I'm just going to clear this up now because I did a quiz in which this was the answer. I'm not going down this road again. I'm accepting both answers.
Yeah.
The question is, who got there first? So the person who sent me the answer first was Nia.
Oh.
1 point to Nia.
Nice.
Narration number 2. There's a small chance David might get this in the first sentence, but I doubt it.
It's okay.
Right.
I'll never forget the heat of that moment. The ash, the burning, the screaming. I walked away from the biggest regret of my life, but not before I took it. His defense, his only chance of survival, hoping to give it to his nearest and dearest one day. I still hear his "I hate you" echoing in my head, and the falling of his limbs as I sliced him clean off. The metal of his clothing still gripping onto the gravel of the ground. Over time he slips even further from the high ground.
I couldn't remember the name.
So I'm going to say I'm happy to not accept spelling because Nia has sent me Star Wars.
I got too excited. I was like, oh.
Specifically third one. Then followed with prequel and lol. David sent me quite simply Revenge of the Sith, and then decided to also follow that with Star Wars because apparently I can't be trusted. So was this Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith? Yes, it was. The question is, who was fastest? I think we all know that because of the fact that the word star wasn't spelt correctly, Nia gets the point.
Nice.
Oh.
So yeah, Nia got there very quickly. I think it's because
Well
she put
done.
in Star Wars and you put in Revenge of the Sith with the correct capitalization, I would also say.
Oh, he went there.
I know, I was like, should I be this pedantic?
Okay. Number 3.
What a dark and cold place. Water dripping all over, and not just from the large pool in front of me. But it's all worth it for him, I think. I grip onto my bag as if my life depends on it. The splashing of the water warns me of his arrival. Lining up dinner for us both, I sit beside the pool with a cheery look on my face. I see his arm, a most peculiar arm, reach out and touch an egg. I can't help but think a variety of thoughts at the absurdity of it all. Mostly, how can I be this deep in thought and intelligent conversation with myself when I can't even speak?
David still thinking?
Yeah, no idea. No idea.
Okay, so David has gone for Blue Lagoon. Nia has gone for The Shape of Water.
Yes.
It's The Shape of Water. I thought the egg was like the giveaway.
Yeah. I was like, ooh. But then you also said you can't speak.
Yeah, right at the end. So
Yeah.
I thought that would also be the thing that would instantly like.
Because I was like eating by the pool. I was like, what the?
I know. The egg threw me because we said about Harry Potter, so my mind immediately went to that like golden egg when he's in the hot tub, the bath thing in Goblet of Fire, and I was like, we've had Harry Potter, get that out of your mind. I was like,
Can I say I did watch the trailer again this morning just to double check it wasn't egg, because I knew it was like an obscure food. I just wanted to make sure exactly what it was, and it was just
hard-boiled eggs.
Hard-boiled eggs.
yeah.
Okay,
So
are we ready for number 4?
Yes.
Let's see.
Okay.
I woke up on a cold, wintry morning, my eyes blinking wildly by the newfound light of day. Everything was eerily quiet, much too quiet. The hustle and bustle of what should be one of the busiest days of my life was just gone, like a father going to buy cigarettes and never coming back. Maybe that's what happened. I walked around the joint, trying to find any signs of life. No one. Not a single sign of anyone. No mother or father, no sisters or brothers. I was alone in this crazy world. So that's when I decided if I was going to be alone in this crazy world, that's when I treated it such. I'll eat what I want, do what I want, and watch gangster movies as much as I want. Filthy animals indeed.
So at that point, I think we all know what the answer is, and the answer is, say it with me,
Home Alone.
Home Alone.
Home Alone. The question is, who was quickest? It was Nia.
Oh, God, I did terribly.
So those are all 4 of the scenarios I've lined up, and
Oh,
Nia
wow.
got all of them quickly. So to make this final round interesting and make the entire first part of the game somewhat moot, instead of me giving you a film noir narration and you
Oh.
having to say what film it is. I'm going to give you a film that I've put onto it, that I basically got from a random generator, and I want you, within a minute, to come up with a film noir narration you are then going to give to us.
Oh, God.
Interestingly, though, it is giving me something somewhat linked to Nia, because what it gave me was Shrek.
Ah, nice.
But what I'm going to do, to be fair, is if Nia wins, then Nia just wins everything. If you win, David, I'm going to say that there are 2 games and you are the winner of each game.
Cool.
Cool?
Yeah.
So, are we ready?
Yes.
I think it is safe to say that is time up.
Now that was my jam.
Yep.
It took me for a ride.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is the minute-long version of the countdown music. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly ask Google to do a coin flip. So, David, as you are in last place at the moment, I will allow you to call the flip. So, do you want heads or tails?
I'll go heads.
It's tails. So that means David will read first.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Here we go.
Fairies. Fairies everywhere. No, not the beautiful, pretty types. Not those seen down a swamp alley bar. These were the types with tails. Fairy tales. Barging in and changing my way of life. My livelihood. My home. I can't help but not settle down as I'm pestered and followed by a talking mule. Talking about parfait. I could do with parfait right now. I could do with getting out into this joint and getting my home and livelihood back. Bring it back, please. Scene.
Yeah, I'm going to reserve judgment on both of them until I've heard both. Nia, what do you have?
Okay. Well, you're probably wondering how you ended up here, in the middle of nowhere, in a swamp, with an ugly old ogre like me. Well, fasten your seatbelts. You're in for a bumpy ride. It all started with a donkey. He came in and interrupted my precious solitude and invaded my home with a bunch of really annoying fairy tale characters you never even thought existed. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Both different approaches.
Yeah. Can I just say, David, when you were just like the tales, fairy tales, I was like, oh, try and keep composure.
I don't know why.
That was good.
Oh, I thought they were both great, but I think what David's had was because he also mixed in a bit of the weird humor that Shrek also has into the film. I'm gonna say that for the film noir writing, David wins that.
Yay.
But I would say, in terms of choosing like an overall winner of the end game, I think because Nia did such a demanding job in the first one, I think it is only fair to say that Nia is the overall winner of this game.
Yes,
so.
definitely.
Nice.
And who followed the typical tropes of a noir narration.
Probably more traditional.
Yeah, I love the Let me take you back to the story kind of aspect.
Well, you're wondering how you got here.
It all started with a mule. As I think all great stories should just have that as their opening.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you. It's been very fun today talking about film noir. It's been very fun having our own attempts at cracking the typical tropes of narrating film noir with such a iconic film as Shrek. And I hope you've had fun today, Nia.
Yes, thank you guys again for having me on. I love discussing film noir with you, and hopefully we can discuss about more film noir, in the future, or other crime dramas. That'll be cool.
Exactly. Yeah. Look out in November, the month for noir.
Yes.
So, where can we catch you, Nia? What is the best socials to catch you on, and what you got planned and working on at the moment?
Yes, you can catch me both on Twitter and Instagram at Aloofness. And you can basically just catch me working remotely, again, still at Sun and Moon. I can't tell you guys what I'm working on yet, but hopefully the next time we chat, I can dish some good stuff, because it's going to be good.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we look forward to that. And as usual, you can catch us on Well Good Movies, also new onto Twitter, but also on Facebook and Instagram. And you can also catch us at freshtakehub.com/wellgoodmovies, which is our website that has both the podcast and some great articles about other films, Scarface, reviews, news, all that kind of cool stuff. So go check that out. Thank you guys. Anything lastly from yourself, Craig?
I should probably go and rest my voice.
Especially after doing narrations as well, so you're already tired out your voice, and then you go and do narrations.
What can I say? I love this podcast.
Great work.
Well, thank you guys, and please, everyone at home, go check out Sunset Boulevard and Rafifi and lots of other noir films. It's a great genre, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, Nia. Thank you, Craig, and thank you, everyone at home. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Wait, stop.
Can that happen, please, on a countdown episode?
My heart.
Stop.